We have definitely turned the corner on the pandemic here in the U.S., but more than a year after the virus uprooted all of our lives, the risk of developing post-traumatic stress disorder has never been higher, especially among our kids. Joining us now to discuss the pandemic's effects on our collective mental health is Dr. Michele Nealon. She's a clinical psychologist and the president of the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Catalina.
So, Dr. Nealon, there's been the obvious fear of getting sick and dying from COVID-19, then the fear of isolation, on top of financial stressors. So just how traumatic has this time been for people?
Oh, it's been very traumatic, and it's not over yet. It's different than stress. Chronic trauma is when we have a negative emotional reaction to something that has happened to us. That something is exactly what we've just all been through. It's big, it's frightening, it's overwhelming, and it has caused a lot of anxiety. So there's a lot of stress. There's also a lot of stress for both children and adults alike.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've all felt it. And children have been impacted in so many ways as well, specifically with remote learning. Although they are very resilient, some are still processing that trauma. Can you tell us what signs and symptoms parents can be on the lookout for?
Yes, absolutely. It's very helpful to group those symptoms and signs into categories. So some children are going to show us that they're stressed or even experience traumatic stress by being sad, anxious, irritable, even angry. You see it in their behaviors as well. Events and activities that children used to like to engage in, they may stop. They might avoid things associated with the stressor or the traumatic event altogether. Schoolwork may start slipping. They may seem less able to concentrate than before, more apt to get into fights, and even concerned about separating from their parents.
You know, I wonder, doctor, what could be the long-term impact of not addressing this trauma and this post-traumatic stress early on?
Well, it's a great question, Catalina. We always say at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology that our mental health is integral to our overall well-being, and that's especially true for children. So it's so important now to get ahead of any of those long-term impacts by getting children the help that they need. There is no shame associated with seeking help for mental health issues. In fact, it's a wonderful thing to do. So the best thing that parents and teachers and any caregiver can do is find a qualified mental health practitioner to help children get back on their feet. Children are really resilient, like you said, Catalina, but they still need our support.
Oh, absolutely. They always do. And I wonder, you know, as schools get back into full session now, beginning in August and September, do you expect them to feel any type of extra anxiety and fears when it comes to they've been isolated for a year or so? What kind of impact do you think that's going to have on them returning to the classroom?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the symptoms following a traumatic event is perhaps avoiding anything that is linked to that traumatic event. So we spent our time for over a year telling children that it wasn't safe to go to school. So going back to school might regenerate some of those fears that they have. So routines and structure, so important. Getting children to talk about their fears in advance and giving them accurate information, helping them stay away from their social media. There's so much misinformation and gobbledy information out there. Focus on the benefits for going back to school and tell the children everything that people are doing at the school in order to get them a great start for fall.
Oh, no, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Finally, before I let you go, anything else that parents can do to make sure that their kids are properly processing this year, and the parents as well, right?
Yes, parents, take care of yourselves. The more that you take care of yourselves, the more that you're in a great space to be able to take care of your children. But other little tips, Catalina, for parents, very important to open up the conversation. Let children talk to you about what they're thinking and what they're feeling. If they tell you that they're sad, it's not so good to say, oh, don't be sad, because that gives the child an impression that that's the wrong feeling to have. Instead, saying, I'm so sorry you're sad, let's talk on through it. Keep children busy. busy. Let them feel useful. Chores and all those great things are there more than just to get help, but to keep children feeling useful, important parts of the family, and get them out and about again. They need to be outside enjoying their lives.
You know, you just hit on something that's so important, and it's speaking out, talking to people, you know, talking to a therapist. You know, the LA County Department has a mental health access hotline. The number, by the way, 1-800-854-7771, 1-800-854-7771. So important that we're doing all of these things and reaching out for help. Dr. Michele Nealon, thank you so much for joining us today to discuss this very important subject.
My pleasure. Thanks for raising the conversation.